It begins on Nick and Amy's 5th wedding anniversary. Nick goes to his and his sister, Margot's bar, and everything seems fine. Flashbacks from 2005, where Amy writes an entry in her diary about being very happy because she met Nick on that day, how they got talking, kissed, and spent the night together. At the bar, Margot asks Nick if Amy will have the anniversary treasure hunt she always has. He gets a call from the neighbor, and he heads home. But when he gets home, it's chaos inside. The furniture is overturned, broken glass is everywhere, and Amy is nowhere to be found. The police arrive, and Detective Rhonda Boney and Officer James begin the investigation. Nick tells them Amy is missing under suspicious circumstances. The couple stayed there for 2 years before that they lived in New York. Both of them are writers. They came here because Nick's mom got sick and eventually died. He says he owns a bar with his sister now. They go to the kitchen, and Rhonda notices blood splatter on the wall, and she marks the scene. They go to Amy's room, and Rhonda gets to know that Amy is the creator of a cartoon book called Amazing Amy. Flashbacks of Amy writing about the day Nick proposed to her in her diary. It started with a conversation Nick and her had about her parents being too uptight and not letting her get a pet. Soon, her father asked her to speak to reporters about Amazing Amy getting married. They ask her how she feels about the character getting married before she does, and Nick comes there to defuse the situation, cracks a few jokes, and proposes to her. Detective Rhonda tells Nick they're tracking Amy's phone, credit cards. They'll put up flyers and a conference tomorrow to get the word out. Rhonda asks him if Amy has any friends. Nick says no. They're surprised. They ask him to call his in-laws about the situation and to tell them to come for the conference tomorrow. Flashbacks of Amy writing about how everyone told her marriage is hard work and full of compromises in her diary. But she said it was not true for her and Nick, as 2 years were all good, like when they have sex in a library. A lady named Noelle tells Rhonda she's Amy's best friend and asks her if she can talk. Rhonda says she'll speak to her later. An officer informs Rhonda that it's definitely blood splatter she's seen in the kitchen. Also, the house, utilities, cars, credit cards, and even the bar is in Amy's name. Rhonda finds Clue 1. Nick meets Amy's parents at the police station. They do the press conferences and interviews to gather support for finding Amy. The parents tell Rhonda about her crazy lover named Desi Collins who attempted suicide after she broke up with him in sophomore, and they had to get a restraining order on him. Also Tommy O'Hare, who got physical with her after she broke up with him 8 years ago. Rhonda asks them if there was anything recent. Nick says no. Rhonda gives him the clue she found and asks his help to crack it. He tells her that it's a part of the treasure hunt she always plans for their anniversary. He reads the clue and says he knows the answer to it. They go to his office and find another clue. Rhonda finds a woman's red underwear, bags it as evidence, and asks him about where the next clue leads. He says he doesn't know. Then he goes to a wooden house mentioned in the clue. The alarms start blaring, but he finds the third clue. Rhonda enters and asks him what he's doing there. He hides the clue and says he comes to check on his father's house every week. Rhonda says she thought it was the house mentioned in the previous clue. He denies it and asks if they were following him. They say they're just doing their job. Amy writes in her diary, "If you want to test your marriage for cracks, 1 recession and 2 lost jobs does the trick." Nick talks to her about being laid off. She tells him that she'll probably be next. She tells him that her parents are in huge debt, and they asked if they can borrow from her trust fund. Nick asks her how much do they want. She says $1 million. He says that's almost her entire trust fund. He says they won't have much if she loses her job, but she tells him that as long as they have each other, everything else will be okay. He agrees. Nick is playing video games. Amy asks him why he bought a new laptop. He says she can give her parents almost $1 million, but she can't trust him. She tells him he's spending too much. He tells her she doesn't trust him. That's why she made him sign the prenup. She tells him that he's turning her into a nagging, controlling person. He apologizes, saying he's never not had a job before, so he doesn't know how to deal with it. She tells him he'll get one soon. Nick goes to the event organized to find Amy. Rhonda asks Nick if he knows Noelle, who says she's Amy's best friend. He says that he doesn't know her. Nick spots Desi Collins at the event, and Rhonda says not to worry as they are monitoring everyone present. The search continues for Amy. Amy felt after they lost their jobs, things got worse, and then they moved to Missouri because Nick's mom got cancer. She felt like he's happy to be there, but just not with her. Nick goes to Margot's house. He tells her he just doesn't want to be judged, as everyone is constantly judging him. Margot goes to sleep. He gets a text and hears a sound. He checks the door, and his girlfriend, Andy, jumps on him and starts kissing him. He's having an affair. She says she's been so worried about him. They have sex. As time passes, Amy feels Nick just uses her for sex. She tells him she wants to have a kid. He says this is the worst time. She says it could be a new start. He says he doesn't want to have a kid to save his marriage. They get into a huge fight, and Nick pushes her. She falls down and gets hit. Rhonda goes to a shady place and questions a guy with a picture of Amy asking if he's seen her. He says she was desperate for a gun on Valentine's Day. Amy writes about how she would feel more safe with a gun as she feels Nick is out to get her. On the third day of the search, Margot sees Andy leave her house in the morning, and she is furious with Nick for cheating on Amy. She asks him how old that girl is. He says she's a student in her 20s. Margot shows him how on the news they are saying Nick is the husband who might have murdered his wife. A famous lawyer named Tanner Bolt is on the news too, and Margot tells him to hire Tanner. The police find a lot of Amy's blood in the kitchen. Nick is talking at Amy's gathering, and Noel screams, asking him what he did to pregnant Amy. He gets mobbed. The police help him get home. Rhonda questions him if he knew she was pregnant. He says Noel is lying and she doesn't know Amy. Rhonda shows him pictures of them together, and he's shocked. He is questioned about the crime scene and the huge amount of Amy's blood in the kitchen. They tell him they feel it's a homicide. Then the officers get a confirmation that she was pregnant, and he loses it and says he won't talk to them without a lawyer. Margot hears Nick talking to Amy's parents about how he's surprised she's pregnant because she didn't want kids. He tells Margot that he wanted kids, and when they got there, he went to a fertility clinic, but she didn't do her part. Margot says she doesn't believe him. Nick then shows her a letter from the clinic. The officers investigating the wooden house find Amy's diary in the basement. Nick cracks the third clue and goes where the clue leads, Margot's shed. He finds all the things Amy brought using her credit cards to show that Nick is spending her money. There's a present waiting for him there. Amy says she's happier now that she's missing, and her cheating, oblivious husband will be put in jail for her murder. Yes, Amy is not dead. She's alive, and this was all part of her elaborate plan to frame Nick for a murder. The entire disappearance was a meticulous scheme. She carefully planted clues to convince everyone that Nick was abusive and ultimately drove her to a breaking point. Right from befriending Noel, who she lied to about her husband's violent temper, to creating money troubles with credit cards. Then she bumped up her insurance, stole Noel's urine when she was pregnant to fake her pregnancy. Finally, she waited for her husband to leave, staged the crime scene and the bloodstains in the kitchen by collecting her blood, then putting it in the kitchen and cleaning it poorly like Nick would, and keeping the fake murder weapon with blood in the fireplace. She also left a diary with 300 entries, beginning with the fairy tale good days. Then she fabricated the descent into their marital misery, the spending, the abuse, the fear, the threats of violence she got. She burnt the book a little and hid it so that the cops could find it. She stopped to cut and dye her hair, and after 10 hours of driving, she got a place where she could hide out. She says, "You think I'd let him destroy me and be happier than ever? Never." Nick goes to Margot's shed with her and shows her all the stuff Amy brought from the credit cards and a gift. They open the gift, and it's another clue talking about how she's going to put him in jail. Amy meets her neighbor where she's currently staying, named Greta. One day as they were by the pool, Amy tells Greta how she went to Nick's bar to surprise him, and she saw him kissing Andy. Nick goes to meet the top lawyer Tanner Bolt, who listens to his story and asks him if anyone can testify against her. He names Tommy O'Hare and Desi Collins. Nick meets Tommy, and he tells Nick that she accused him of raping her when he tried to break up with her. She planned it perfectly and went to his house with a bottle of bourbon, had some rough sex with him, and the next day, there were cops on his door, and they found his semen in her. He pled guilty for a lesser punishment, but his life was ruined. Nick goes to meet Desi Collins, and he asks him why they broke up, and tells Desi that Amy told him she broke up with him, and he became crazy and threatened to commit suicide and was institutionalized. Desi doesn't answer and just leaves. Rhonda is rereading the diary, and her officer asks her why she's doing that. She says she feels something fishy as he didn't burn the diary fully. Tanner comes to Missouri to help Nick. He narrates the full story, and Tanner suggests they should tell the cops about Andy, as she may go public about their relationship, but warns after that the cops will go after Margot, as they will feel she's the accomplice. He says they need to start searching for Amy, and he has some guys at Secret Service who can help with that, but asks where should they start looking. Amy is golfing with Greta and Jeff, her friend, and when she's celebrating a win, she drops her huge bag of cash. Noticing that Greta says she thought she was broke, but Amy says they are all singles, they ask her if she's a stripper and tease her. Tanner tells Nick that he needs to confess about his affair on live TV, and he can set up an interview with the news channel, and he will media train him for all the questions. Later, when she's cleaning, she gets robbed by Greta and Jeff, which drains her cash reserves. With just some cents left, she goes to call Desi and meets him. She lies to him about Nick being violent, and he tells her she can stay at his lake house. Nick is ready to give the interview, but just minutes before it, Andy announces that she was romantically involved with Nick at a press conference. But he chooses to go ahead with the interview. Desi takes her to the lake house, and while showing her around states that she's completely safe there as the whole house is under surveillance. He gets her new clothes and everything she needs. When Desi leaves, she pretends to cry and scream by the cameras to show that he was forceful with her. Nick gives a heartfelt interview, insisting he loves Amy and wants her back. This helps to shift public opinion slightly, but it's also his way of luring Amy out, knowing she's watching. And it works. She's watching it with Desi, who wants her to forget Nick and be with him. The police raid Margot's shed and find all the gifts Amy framed Nick with. They arrest Margot and question Nick. They ask Nick about the lines in her diary about him hitting her and she being scared that he's going to kill her. They find the weapon with blood and arrest Nick. After a while, Tanner gets Nick and Margot out on bail until the trial. Amy lures Desi and slits his throat while they were having sex. Covered in blood, she goes home and throws herself into Nick's arms while the media snaps pictures. She tells the cops that Desi kidnapped her and did horrible things to her. She confesses to Nick that she killed Desi when they're naked in the shower. Nick tells Rhonda and Tanner, but they can't help him, as the case is with the feds now. An interview is scheduled with a news reporter, and just before it, Amy tells Nick she is pregnant with his child. Nick realizes he's trapped. Nick can't leave her, and the couple returns to their seemingly idyllic suburban life. Nick has no choice but to stay, haunted by the knowledge of what Amy has done, yet bound to her for the rest of his life. Thank you guys for watching. I hope y'all liked the video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to watch many more such cool recaps. And hit the bell icon too. Bye.